Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Corporate Cafe, the podcast where we invite you to sit back, stick the kettle on, and join us in conversation with successful entrepreneurs and industry professionals. I'm James, and today I'm very excited to be in conversation with an old colleague of mine who has since gone on to become the co-founder and creative director of the lifestyle brand Vaabs, Jay Topham. So hello, Jay. Thank you so much for joining me in the Corporate Cafe.
Morning, how's it going? Glad to be here.
I'm doing very good, thank you, but I do have a burning question before we get started. As you are in the Corporate Cafe, what is your drink order?
Always flat white, without a doubt.
A flat white, good choice. I think today I'm personally going to go for a chai latte. I just think something with all of those amazing flavours will just go down a treat on top of the absolute treat of being able to have a catch up with you, Jay. Because just to provide some background information for the audience, me and Jay used to work in retail together way back in 2015. And since then, Jay set up Vaabs. And for the longest time since, I've been watching the company grow. So I'm really looking forward to hearing much more about everything that went into it. But before I get too ahead of myself, Jay, if you could just tell everyone a bit more about who you are and what your business is.
Of course. So I'm Jay, I'm a creative working out of London, and I run a business called Vaabs, which is a lifestyle brand. We have kind of two arms. We do sort of creative service and then we sell product on the other hand. So yeah, a real kind of breadth of creative output under the category that we use of lifestyle brand.
And when did you start the business?
Yeah, so we started working on it, me and my business partner, in early 2017. We spent about 12 months working on the concept and we came to market in June 2018. So it's coming up to our 3rd year anniversary.
Wow, 3 years, as if it's been 3 years now. That makes me feel so old. It's like when someone has a child and in the blink of an eye, boom, they're not a child anymore. They're already walking and talking and paying taxes. But with Vaabs, where did the actual idea for the business come from?
So actually, personally, like I've always been kind of working on brand concepts in the background. I've brought a couple to market, but never one that I've kind of backed wholeheartedly. And this one actually came about with my business partner, Thibaut. He reached out to me through a mutual connection for kind of branding services. And when we sat down, because I'm a brand designer, brand experience designer, when we sat down and I talked about his vision, like I just really connected with it and like we hit it off. We had a great partnership. So I started branding the business for him in terms of that I was going to hand it over. But the connection was just super strong. So what we did is we just agreed, let's work on it together. So it became like both of our babies. Like we worked on the brand concept together. We developed the product. So yeah, really the foundations of it were the word. So my business partner is South African, and it's how he would say the word vibes. So it's like the phonetic spelling of vibes. So we had that, and that was kind of all we had. We knew we loved community, coffee culture, nice kind of minimal design. So we just built something from nothing off the back of that conversation, really.
That sounds great how you initially started out by just helping with the branding, but your vision perfectly matched with your business partners. So you decided to go into business together and start building this up from the very beginning with each other. Because did you ever think that you'd end up becoming a business owner? Or was it just when the opportunity presented itself to you, did you think that you were in a good place to take on this challenge and just go for it?
Yeah, so it was a bit of both. So I think it was inevitable that I would go down this route. Like I said, I launched a couple things. I did jumped on the back of the tie-dye trend, and we kind of custom tie-dyed some clothing and built a brand around that. And then I worked on concepts with some friends. We got logos and got to that point, but never quite tipped it over the edge. So this one was just great timing. Sometimes like you just need that kick to get it moving, and having that conversation with Thibaut and seeing his passion just meant both of our visions kind of came together. So I guess, yeah, it was kind of inevitable for me that I would go down this route, but the timing for this one was just ideal.
So did you have much business knowledge before going into this, or has it really just been learning along the way?
Yeah, I had none. I think it would be wrong of me to say I had any, really. But I knew about creativity, so I worked in agencies, so I knew how to brand companies. I knew how to bring kind of physical spaces to life for brands, get things printed, get things made. So I knew about kind of like day-to-day running of businesses and what was expected, but more from a brand perspective. So And I knew the power of having a really strong brand, and I knew how to kind of deliver that. I didn't know how to set up a business, how to run day to day, how to sell products. So I probably didn't have business experience, but I had enough creative experience that it was kind of transferable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. You were able to use your skills in the creative industry to help you with your decision making on the business side of things, which by the sounds of it, you were mainly learning on the job. But I'm sure to many people that can sound quite daunting to go in without much knowledge. But you've done that and your company's doing really well. So what sort of advice would you have for people who are wanting to take the plunge into business without any experience, based on your own experiences doing the same thing?
Yeah, I'd say there's two things really, and this is based on like my reflections, but also conversations I kind of consistently have with people. The first one is just to really understand like the core of what you're doing, because how you do it, what product you make, what markets you're in, it's going to change as a startup business. Like we have to kind of pivot like all the time, but if you have that core understanding of your brand, so what the essence is, what the real purpose is, and you keep referring back to that, then what you'll do is like create something quite consistent. And even though you kind of change your angle, you'd start a new product base or you change your color palette, for example, the essence of what you're doing really stays the same. And I think that's crucial, because what startups often do is they're kind of pivoting too much. So they're changing every 10 minutes, every 5 years, that they're doing something completely different. So my real advice would be, firstly, to know what the core of it is. But then the second advice is like not to be too precious. As a designer, I'm like a proper perfectionist. So often like I'll spend too long refining stuff, and like you want everything to be perfect, but there is a beauty in just putting something out there. Obviously you've got to do the best you can with that product, but if you keep refining, like honestly, you'll never launch stuff. So I think there's a real beauty in just putting stuff out there, getting it into the market, seeing what people think, get people behind it, and then learning on the job. Like there's an awful lot of learning on the job, I have to say.
I think that's a great point, actually, because I'm the exact same as you with that perfectionist mindset. I guess it's because I come from a media background personally, where I'll constantly refine and add to my edit, because things can always be altered and changed. But you do need to just start releasing things as soon as possible, because it's a great way to get opinions from your actual customers. You'll see what products they resonate with and what products you could do with potentially altering to grip their attention more. It's market research, effectively, which you can use in the creative brainstorming for your newer products and things like that, which I guess is very important for Vaabs, as it's a lifestyle brand. But has Vaabs always been a lifestyle brand? Because if I remember correctly, it initially started more like a clothing brand predominantly, selling the hoodies and products like that. But I've noticed over the past year, the company started selling a wider range of products, such as your coffee beans and portraiture. So were they always part of the plan, or was that a way that you adapted the company as it grew?
Yeah, so they I guess the individual product has kind of grown with where we see our positioning, but the plan was always to sell lifestyle products. So naturally, I think people connect with clothing, and it's quite an easy step into the market. So that's where we started. And it is really the foundation of our brand. But from day one, we said this is a lifestyle brand, not a clothing brand, not a fashion brand. So we launched with hoodies and tees, kind of organic cottons made in England, super heavyweight, like really well made. And then we just evolved. So the products you referenced there actually came off the back of the lockdown last year. So because we were a lifestyle brand and we had that kind of more open view of product, and we weren't kind of narrowing ourselves down only to clothing, like when we realised people were spending an awful lot of time in their homes, we thought, okay, like what's our take on that? And that's where the print shop came from that you mentioned. So people wanting to reinvent their interiors, kind of going from work to night, and how do you keep that space fresh? So we launched a range of custom artwork so people could do that and keep their interiors fresh. And then on the same point, later in the year, we brought coffee to market, because naturally, like, we couldn't go to the corporate cafe and grab our favourite flat white, so people were doing that from home. So we worked with a specialty coffee roastery in Nottingham, and blended our own bean, branded that up, and then got that out to market. So yeah, day one we wanted to be a lifestyle brand, but because of that, it meant we could react to situations. So it served us really well, in all honesty.
Okay, so in many ways, you were actually inspired by the lockdown and started releasing products targeted at combating some of the issues that people would have been facing with the new changes to their day-to-day lives, which fitted in nicely with you expanding your product base for the lifestyle brand as well. I actually think that's really clever. I think that would be a great tip for anybody if we ever go through something like this again, which fingers crossed we don't. But if we do, how can you turn that negative into a positive? I think that's really interesting and inspiring that. But one thing that I'd like to know is, because you're selling clothing and coffee and portraiture, which are all completely different types of products, I'm sure you're going to have to be finding completely different suppliers for each product. And of course, you'll be having to communicate with these different suppliers in different ways. So how do you go about sorting out all of that? Do you do that personally, or do you have somebody on board to do this for you? And how do you even get these suppliers in the first place?
So it's a great question, because this is probably the hardest part for us as a product brand. So naturally, we design and we come up with the concepts ourselves, and we do source them ourselves as well. So from day one, we just kind of are reaching out to manufacturers, a lot of Googling, looking at contacts we know, asking around. So with the coffee, for example, what we actually did was we put a post out to our audience, because for us, coffee was kind of obvious. Like we've shot in coffee shops from day one. Like coffee culture is kind of ingrained in who we are as a brand. So we actually kind of used our audience for that one, and it worked great. So we put a post out like, guys, like, let us know your favorite coffee houses. And we got so many responses because it was quite natural, like I said, to link to the brand. People sending us coffee houses all over the country, even some global ones. But one brand actually reached out to us, and we just connected with them based on like they were interested in working with us. So we just went to meet them, got on really well with them. We tried some coffee. So that one was kind of natural. But then with the product, like clothing and stuff, we actually work with we have a production guy, Louis, and he helps a lot with the product side. So just sourcing manufacturers, has a much better understanding of that industry. So it's really hard to find the right guys to bring these products to life. But it is something we do internally, and we just try and work on ourselves.
The way that you got your coffee suppliers is actually a very smart way of sourcing a supplier in general, actually, by asking your customers what they like and allowing them to have a voice in the decision making for the company. It's an ingenious way of helping them connect to the products more, especially in a time where going to your favourite cafe just unfortunately hasn't been possible. It really is a shame that the corporate cafe wasn't open at the time, because who knows, in an alternate world, we could have been your coffee suppliers. Anyway, you've been doing a lot of research for yourself, but you've also luckily got some people on board to help you internally with finding the suppliers. And by the sounds of it, you're mainly sourcing from suppliers in the UK at the moment, are you?
Yeah, so our clothing is made in Leicester, and our cotton is woven in Leicester as well. So really short cycle there. So they actually, sometimes they just drive it round to the manufacturer. So we've got a real nice process there. Our coffee is made in Nottingham, and our prints are printed in London. And then everything is kind of operationally run from Birmingham. So it's all shipped out from Birmingham. So yeah, we have quite a tight knit in the UK at the moment, and we kind of pride ourselves on that. We're trying to do sort of well-made, conscious products. So short runs, recycled papers. So yeah, all in the UK at this present moment.
And do you have any intentions to start branching out and doing more international stuff, or is Vaabs more about the home pride of everything being made in the UK? What's your thought process on that?
So for us, it's about what's right for the product. So we have customers globally, which is great. And we did do a short run collection in Portugal, because they're kind of renowned for their jerseys. So when we were doing like these particular T-shirts, we actually went out to Portugal and did that there. So it's all about the product. Like if we can do it to the best ability, both kind of consciously and quality wise in the UK, we do tend to lead on that. Obviously, it's a nice touch, but also we can manage the process better, because we could, like, same time zone, we can kind of travel if we need to. But yeah, like if there's guys in Portugal that are smashing a certain product, like we have no problem jumping on that as well. But yeah, like I said, it really comes down to the quality. Like if we can consistently deliver quality, it doesn't really matter where we do it.
Yeah, I'm nodding my head to that, because I completely agree. Quality will always take precedent over location. That just makes total sense. I do find it interesting though, because you do all of this work for the company in terms of sourcing the suppliers and other things like that, but your role's technically the creative director of Vaabs. I mean, of course, as you're the co-founder as well, I assume that there's a lot of blurred lines in terms of your job title and actual responsibilities, but could you just explain a bit more about what your role is and how much you actually do for the company?
So naturally, as a small startup, we do everything. But I guess if we had kind of ownable roles, like I just own the creative image that the brand puts out. So whether that's kind of designing product, how the packaging looks on the coffee, what the coffee goes in, what kind of cards do you get in the package when you receive it, all the way to the Instagram. Like I work on all the graphic content for stories, the website, updating the website. And I branded the company in the first place, so created the logo, the typeface, the real sort of atmosphere that we give off. So me and my business partner, Thibaut, we really kind of own everything together, and like we carry the weight equally. But yeah, if I had particular roles, it would be really just to make sure that we're consistently delivering the same creative message across all of our channels.
So, because you're doing so much at the moment for the company, as it's a startup and your responsibilities are split across multiple sectors of the business, does that mean that Vaabs is now your full-time profession? So did you have to give up any other work to take this on full-time? Or are you able to do all of this for the business whilst maintaining another job on the side? Because for a lot of people, there's a financial implication which may prevent them from going into a business venture because, of course, it can be very unstable in terms of income. So how are you managing both your time and your income at the moment?
Yeah, so we do work as well. So I work with an agency at the moment, kind of doing sort of brand experience design. What we found is that a real part of the brand we want to build is quite considered. It's not very sort of in your face or shouty. So from a commercial aspect, we kind of understood that it's going to take time because we don't do promotions. We don't chuck loads of ads at people. So what we're doing is we're kind of patient. And I think it's a real kind of missing link for some startups is that like you expect it to happen too quickly. So what we're doing at the moment, like I said originally as well, touching on that, is that we have two arms. So the product arm, which we've dived into, but we also provide branding services for people. So clients like love what we're doing at Vaabs, so then they can kind of jump on that, and we use our network of freelancers to deliver creative work for them. So there's kind of three streams of income there. Two from Vaabs and then one from our own stuff that we pursue in our own time. But yeah, I guess the real fundamental is that it's about patience and not trying to do too much too quickly, grabbing too much investment. So in terms of the financial implications you mentioned there, for us, like we know that patience will build a better brand in the long run. So we have kind of like a 5-year plan, and we're obviously in the third year now. So when it comes to the 5-year plan, and we spent 5 years building like that consistent brand tone that isn't led by promotion, isn't led by sales. We're a lifestyle brand, so we talk about lifestyle before product. The aim is that will benefit us at the end of that 5-year plan.
Yeah, that's a very interesting approach to a business, I must say, because straight away when I think about setting up a business, the first things that come to my mind are profit and continued custom. But what you're saying is Vaabs is about the image first, and then has the patience to let customers come in naturally and more sincerely through a better brand image. And based on what you were just saying about the two arms of the company as well, we've already discussed the products arm a bit. So could you go a bit more in depth about the branding arm of the company and the services that you offer there?
Sure. So basically what happened was when we launched a brand, people were really connecting with the aesthetic, and we were kind of putting it out to people in our sort of circles. And a lot of people were kind of interested in how we'd landed on the brand identity. So we'd done that in-house. So it was just an opportunity to kind of tell people like, look, we can look at that for you. And that kind of took off really. So we did a few identities early on when we first, like in the first year of launch. And then since then, we've just kind of made a thing of it and kind of been very much based on word of mouth. People have kind of recommended us, and then we've been handed over, and we've done a few brand identities. And what I mean by that is we just kind of help people come to market. So looking at what their brand sort of stands for, building a really sort of robust foundation, all the kind of brand strategy work that they will need to be able to go into market with a kind of really considered brand. And then obviously the more sort of generic elements of that, so logo, typefaces, what their sort of graphic style is, and really sort of helping them craft a unique personality, a unique tone of voice for their brand. So we do that regularly. We use a kind of network of freelancers. So we have brand designers, art workers, creative writers, web developers. We can kind of do a bit of everything. So it's really just about supporting startup brands. We kind of understand the strength in having like a really well resolved and thought out brand kind of 2-3 years down the line. You'll really see the value in that. So we try and help people do that right at the very start so they can come to market with a much more engaging brand personality.
So people were impressed with the way that you'd created an identity for Vaabs, and from there you were able to create this service where you help other businesses create something that you've become renowned for yourselves. It sounds like this was something that you didn't initially plan to do though, but you found a way of turning this into another part of the business, which seems to have paid off. And you were speaking earlier about a 5-year plan that you'd created at the beginning. Has that always largely gone according to plan, or has there been many other interesting diversions that you faced when things haven't gone according to plan? And how has that impacted the business?
So the 5-year plan, I think we're probably on track, ideally. There's a few things we do to maintain that. Is we have January workshops where we review the previous year. I guess that's kind of normal, but we also review the overriding brand message that we're delivering. So ever since 2018, we've just made sure year on year that we're sticking to the goal, the purpose, and that's coming across. Is there any nuances we can mix up to keep it fresh but still deliver that? So that's really helped over the years. And I guess the obstacles that have come across, I think in 2019, we slowed down a bit. We kind of were preoccupied and stuff and couldn't invest the time we wanted. So 2018 and 2020 were our best years by far. So that's kind of interesting. But I think naturally at the start, when your attention is elsewhere, like those things happen. But what we're finding now, and I guess you're going to get onto it, so I won't jump the gun too soon. But the lockdown really elevated our brand for a number of reasons. So like we've actually really used that to our advantage, which is great for us. Obviously for a lot of people, it really hasn't worked out like that. So we've really just tried to make the most of all the obstacles that have come our way.
Yeah, we're very much there now in the conversation, aren't we? So let's discuss the elephant in the room, the coronavirus pandemic. As much as we've discussed so far, I know that the portraiture and the coffee products came to you during lockdown, and you were just saying about how 2020 was actually a really good year for the business in general. But if you could just explain to me how the pandemic both directly and indirectly affected the business, and how you've been able to ensure that the business has survived through all of that.
Yeah, so I guess naturally, like there's been a lot of positives for us, which is great because we've just really sort of invested our time in it. And what we've done, and obviously it's been a key thread in this conversation in particular, is utilize that lifestyle brand. So for us, as soon as it happened, we sat down as a team and said, look, what should we be doing here? Like, what is Vaabs' interpretation of this situation? And we launched the Work From Home series, which was at the moment a 4 to 5 piece journal series spread over months. And it had playlists that we created. It had like moments for the mind. So little kind of online destinations for like headspace and kind of keeping people sane in the situation we're in. It had like living packs, so products that we thought would elevate your home experience. And that's what moved us onto coffee and print. So what we tried to do was be a voice for the moment. And that ties back to what we are as a lifestyle brand. So like, how can we help people? And it might be a little thing, just 5 minutes away from your screen, or 5 minutes to think about something else, where you scroll through one of our journals or you listen to our playlist. So we tried to really be a voice at the time. That's what we did from kind of overriding brand perspective. And then from a supply chain, like it didn't really affect us. We started coffee, they were still running as normal. And we started prints, they were still running as normal. I think a big negative that we turned to a positive was that my business partner's company made a lot of redundancies. So his time just switched, and then he invested a lot of energy into the Vaabs creative side, so the creative services. And naturally, it just happened that obviously over lockdown, a lot of people were thinking about their own businesses and starting new projects. So we managed to support a lot of guys with that. So we did a webinar where we talked about how you would start a brand, and then we got chatting to a few guys after that. So I think for us, it was kind of just trying to be present with a voice, Like, we didn't want to throw product at people and kind of take too much advantage of this situation, but we wanted to be there and like have a voice for the situation and adapt our brand to evolve to that situation. So yeah, I guess there's positive and negatives, but I think for businesses it was really kind of like, naturally, obviously some really struggled. It was just kind of making the most of your situation and like really doing what you can. Like, if you can add value, sweet. If you can just stay above water, then you got to do that.
I like that. It sounds that you really understood the severity of the situation for everyone, and instead of forcing products down their throats, you found other ways to connect with your community through the webinars and the work from home series to do whatever you could do to help people out, which is a prime example of what you were saying earlier about the patience that you have with the brand and how you're pushing lifestyle before products, which I think is even more valued and appreciated in this time where a lot of people have found themselves struggling so much financially. So were you able to receive any insights into how your social media efforts were being perceived? Was there any way that you could check your analytics and stats to monitor the audience's engagement with it?
Yeah, so we track this data all the time, whether it's from analytics online, like who's clicking, what they're clicking on, all the way through to just engagement on Instagram, like what posts are doing well. But the work from home journal was kind of unique because we introduced playlists. So we had Spotify and Apple Music as a new sort of data feed as well, which is really interesting, like seeing who followed the playlist, how many plays it was getting. So that was really cool to see that like different sort of content we put out kind of engaged different people and different levels of people. So, and to be honest, the work from home series wasn't really about that. It wasn't about generating sales. It wasn't about traffic too much. It was honestly just about us having a voice at a period that like a lot of people were struggling. So I mentioned we put some like external links on there of like tools for the mind, we called it. There was a page, virusanxiety.com, that we really connected with that had like sort of daily mantras and all these cool little tools to help people. So we just linked that on there so people could go and click on that themselves. And we put on what we were reading. So yeah, like we did track it and it was cool to see people hitting on it. But the real sort of purpose of it was exactly that, to get people in there and kind of help them have a little voice for the moment.
So putting in that extra attention to detail and offering these free services out to customers was perceived really well. And it was another way for you to adapt your brand and your outlook during the pandemic. So in many ways, it sounds like Vaabs actually kind of benefited from the pandemic. You really turned that negative into a positive situation. So on that note, are there any other positives that you'd say you'd learned during the pandemic from the business's perspective?
What we really learned last year is, I guess from day one, I've always known, because we were quite a high price point brand. So our hoodies sit between sort of 90 and 110 pounds because of the weight and the cotton and everything. What I always kind of knew about branding is sometimes people will love the brand and they really connect with it, but like maybe the price point is a bit unreachable. So like I sometimes stumble across brands and I'm like, this is really cool, I love this brand, but I maybe don't need that just yet. So like it's always nice to have a lower price point there so that people who just vibe with the brand can just grab something quick and like feel like they're kind of joining the family. So the real benefit we saw from those efforts was the coffee and prints being a lower price point meant that more people just jumped on board and got involved. So we actually saw like a big uprise in new customers last year, but often they were people we were aware of from our Instagram and stuff. So I guess maybe what we did is we made the brand more accessible to those guys. So yeah, that was a super positive that came out of 2020 for us.
Okay, so I guess it was a combination of the social media efforts that you were releasing alongside products retailing at a more accessible price point that really helped your sales figures throughout the year. And that makes sense too, because if new people are finding your brand through your social media efforts, they may not be too inclined to invest in the higher price points of the hoodies just yet. But allowing them to get acquainted with the brand through the cheaper products like the coffee is a great way of establishing a relationship with them from the beginning. So then when you get customers in, how do you think of ways to get customers to stay? Because of course, I imagine you don't want Vaabs to just be a one-time investment and that's it. So have you got any creative ideas that you play around with to get customers to stay and maximize that brand loyalty?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. And like you didn't even know this, but we've actually been running a project this month. So for us, it's always been hard because we run a balance between being a community-led brand and being commercial, because we don't want to be too commercial, but obviously we need to sell, we need to keep the business afloat. So we tread a fine line between those two things of trying to come across as kind of like an atmospheric, non-shouty, kind of warm and welcoming brand. But then also obviously getting people to purchase and invest in our products. So what we did in this month in particular, we in January, we had like a huge amount of hits to the website. And we just noticed it from our analytics. We just keep an eye on it, and it was really high, man. Like the kind of stats we don't often see. So that was cool. And so what we did is we actually sat down and reviewed that. So we looked at every page these guys were landing on and tried to just make things better. Like we called it like website optimization. So loads of guys were hitting the returns and shipping page. So business partner Thibaut just reviewed the tone on there and how clear the message was. Like, does it say free shipping? Is it obvious what you have to do if you want to return a product? And just making all that stuff clear. And then the same with our story page. So we have quite a unique point of view, and that we're like quite honestly just all about good vibes and community and gathering people. So we looked at our story page and said, like, does that tell you that? So if James yourself had never heard of the brand before and landed on that page, like, would you connect with it and go, wow, this is cool? So we worked with a copywriter this month to review that and look at the creative writing on that page and how we elevate that story. So someone landed on the page for the first time, really connects with what we're doing. And then little things like adding a complimentary shipping because people were getting to the checkout and dropping off. So yeah, I guess this is something we're always reiterating. So we talk about a hierarchy of communication. This is something we do for ourselves and we also do for brands. And we say, if it's a new customer on a journey from the brand, say we start with Instagram, it's kind of what do we want them to know at each point. So when they land on the Instagram, we probably want them to know that like this is it's just calm, it's cool, get the tone of voice, get the aesthetic, kind of get an idea of the brand without being too product heavy. And then if they connect to that and click to the website, what's the first thing we want them to know there? And then when they get to a product page, at what point does it come in that we have really sort of considered products? And then is the price point the last thing? So we kind of consistently reiterating that journey and iterating how that flows so that we know that as customers are coming through, they're seeing the right information at the right time. And sometimes you get it wrong, sometimes it works. We can review conversion to see which little elements worked. So yeah, like that's a real ongoing process for us.
Right, so you're taking the customers on a journey where the price point comes at the very end of that. So by that point, the company values have already been established and the customer will already get more of a sense of the, if you pardon the pun, the vibes of the company. And that's a smart way of retaining their interest and giving them all the information that they need to know to justify a sale before they've even got to the price point. And you were saying about how you offer out this hierarchy of communication idea to brands. I'm wondering, where do you get all of that information from that you offer out to others? Is it coming from your research into your own analytics, or is it coming from the agency work that you do, or is it a culmination of both perhaps?
So I'd say it's more the agency side. So I've been lucky enough to work with like huge brands on huge projects, like multi-million-pound projects, and like you get a real feel for the million different approaches you can take. So from like a strategic plan point, like mapping customer journeys, which I kind of talked to there, to a creative standpoint, and then I worked with an agency that were production as well, so bringing those even physical spaces to life, for example. So I guess what's really benefited my business is my experience in agencies with big brands. So I've worked with kind of Lego, Disney, Adidas, huge brands that like are kind of the best in class. So I guess that's probably the key element. And then we just kind of translate that and then naturally selling product day to day, you learn things. Like I said, we keep an eye on analytics, what people are commenting, what other brands are doing. So I guess what you have to do as a startup is just be super conscious and really curious. I think curiosity is one of the things that often is really missing from startups, is just going, okay, so why are those guys doing so well? And what did these guys do at this stage? So just keeping an eye on that sort of stuff and using it and spinning it on a positive foot for your own brand.
It's very impressive that you've been able to work with such big brands, and I can only imagine how much that's helped you out with your understanding of your own business. And with your own business, you initially started it out with one other person, but has your team evolved much over the years? Is it a much larger team now or still relatively small?
Yeah, so one of the real sort of elements of Vaabs, which makes it what it is the team that works on it. So we're big believers in network. So when we started out, it was kind of like, okay, who do we know? So for example, we knew a guy flying to South Africa in December. So we made our products in time for him to take them and do a shoot. He was a videographer. So we kind of always aligned things and decisions with people we knew that could elevate the mission. And then there was 3 people that were consistent on that beyond me and Thibaut. So Louis, who's actually my brother, and he runs all production. So he does that day in, day out for other brands. So he jumps on that and he helps us find manufacturers and develop products, wash testing, fabric samples, all the stuff that for us we know we need to do, but sometimes we're kind of involved in too many things. So like he can have a kind of quite clear eye on that. Then we have Keith, who is our photographer, who creates all our content. What was beautiful about working with him is that we knew the vision and the tone of voice, and he made that visual. So he worked on like how we shoot photography, what that looks like. So yeah, he's super invested. And then finally, Joey, who's our creative writer. Any journal that goes up, any product description, even captions on the Instagram will often go through him. And we'll just say, Joe, this is what we're trying to say. Can you finesse it? And then he'll elevate that. So I was actually thinking about this the other day. Like it's an advantage and it's an absolute asset that we have this team of 5 people who like just understand the vision, and we're all just doing our bit to build it. So I think that'll be what makes the brand. So yeah, that's the team day in, day out.
Right, so you made the decision to keep the team more intimate, but knowing that everyone has the exact same mindset on the targets and values of the company. So when making decisions like this, I assume that you're using all of your newly found knowledge in business to help justify the decisions. So with all of this knowledge that you now have, if you were able to go back and talk to yourself when the business was first starting out, is there any advice that you'd have for yourself based on everything that you know now?
Yeah, I mean, there's a million things I could tell my younger self or someone else or whatever the case may be. But do you know what? I don't think I would, because I think the real reason we've got to the level we've got now is by all the mistakes we've made. I think it's a bit of a cliche, but those failings really have made the brand. For example, with clothing, like every time we put out a piece of clothing, although we're proud of it, they just get better and better. They're in a different league each time. And that's just because of what we've learned from the last one. The things that gone wrong, the information we didn't know, the suppliers we didn't know about, seams, construction, fabric, all those things. It's just like a growing knowledge, like year on year, we just gain more and more insight. So I don't think there's ever going to be a way to get all that at the start. And if there was, I think you would spend too long building it and then maybe you then want to change it by the time you come to market. So there's a real beauty in putting stuff out there and learning with the process. Like, honestly, we're learning every day. Like, we question everything. We get setbacks every day. This supplier can't do that. This costs way too much. And I think that's the beauty of it. That's the real part of it. So it means like when we can build up a budget for a collection 6 years down the line or whatever it is, like that question is going to be so elevated from what we first did because of all these learnings and failings we made along the way. So yeah, and I do tell people that when we do the sort of branding we talked about for startups is like, just get it out there. Like, it's a real balance, obviously. Don't do it too soon, but yeah, just really like learn on the job, man. Like, there's no other way to do it, I don't think.
Yeah, good advice. Embrace that naivety and use that as your biggest learning tool, because no matter how much you prepare, you'll still be constantly learning things along the way. So looking forward, what are the current plans that you have for the company in the future at this point?
Okay, so I think a huge thing for us, which we haven't been able to really manifest, obviously for the last 12 months is a real reason, but it's physical experience. So I keep talking about community, coffee shops, culture, groups of people and networking, and like it's so core to our brand that we have to be in the physical space. So the fact we haven't done that often is like a real disservice to the brand. So we did an event in 2018 in Digbeth in Birmingham. And like, it wasn't a selling event. It was just about getting all the people together. And like, it was really cool. It was a really good opportunity and we enjoyed it. So I guess an immediate thing as soon as we can is to do more of that, whether it's pop-up shops or just events, collaborations with coffee places, is kind of coming to life in a physical space and gathering people. I guess that's real key for our brand. But then even more immediate than that is we're actually working on a new collection of clothing. It'll be our biggest drop since our first drop, and it's kind of building on everything we've learned. We're really excited about it. Like, the product quality is incredible. We've upped our design game. So yeah, that's coming this year. It'll be kind of a few drops throughout the year. So they're the two immediate things. And then long term, like it's just elevating that lifestyle status. So whatever makes sense. We did a bit of stationery earlier this year. So yeah, we'll just keep developing kind of really well-made minimal products and keeping doors open. So yeah, there's a few things on the horizon, which is pretty exciting.
Sounds very exciting. I'm personally excited to see this new clothing line come out because I really vibe with the Vaabs style, so I'm interested to see what your new campaign will be like. And I really do hope that you're soon able to host more physical experiences, as they sound so integral to the message for your business that I can imagine as soon as you're able to host them again, you'll be seeing much more custom for the business. And of course, I know how I can follow and keep up to date with the business, but if you could just let our audience members know where they can find you to keep up to date with everything.
Of course. So our biggest channel is Instagram, and our Instagram is vaabs.co. That's spelled Vaabs. And then our website is vaabs.com. Again, Vaabs. You can sign up to our email there. We let people know about products before they drop. So yeah, socials, Twitter, Facebook. Just keep an eye on us. We try and stay active, engage with the community. So yeah, any new members of that community would be excellent.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jay, for coming on the show today. It's been amazing to have a catch up with you and learn so much more about the successes of your company. And I really do wish Vaabs all the best as it continues to grow. And thank you so much to our listeners for joining us in the Corporate Cafe. But it's now coming up to closing time, and I need to go and get one more coffee ordered before the long journey from my living room to my bedroom. If you enjoyed the show today, then make sure to give us a follow so you can keep up to date with our newest episodes, and share us with your friends too, as there's always a spare seat in the Corporate Cafe. Thanks so much again for listening, and we'll see you next week when we're in conversation with another successful entrepreneur. But until then, it's goodbye for now.